our pod, and by that I mean on Wednesdays we read. I'm Hannah.
I'm Laura.
And we are two best friends who do a deep dive into a new book series, one book at a time. Right now we are cycling through Legendborn. And we are covering chapters 17 through 39 of
practicing
Oathbound.
our kissing and touching.
It's really important to ask consent, and like Nick is king, and I'm looking up fan art of him to be like, how does he, like, yes, I know he's 17 and I'm an adult woman, but like, what does he look like?
Hannah is very interested because Tracy Deonn was like, oh, you didn't think you liked this golden retriever boy? You do.
And also, he's not a golden retriever boy. He just thought he might
not
be. He's a dark boy, like, who is obsessed with getting back to his partners, Sel and Bree.
My weakness is I do not like the put together boy like Nick in the first couple books that I thought he was, the golden retriever boy that kind of has it all put together, so we think.
And the second he turns like dark and twisty, we're like, hello,
I do like
there.
a messy person. Like,
not in our real life relationships. We have two very stable husbands, but like, yeah, in a love interest, I do want them to be a little messy.
I am drawn to the mess.
And I mean, we're getting so far into it, but like, it feels like Nick and Sel are now equally parts messy and equally parts people who Bree could be interested in. And I think before we never got the reason she was interested in Nick. It just felt like forced. And now it's like,
now it's definitely a situation where it's like we have to decide team Nick or team Sel.
I am still team Trouble.
All of them.
Team polyamory, if you will.
That would be a very unique choice if she went with that for a YA novel.
I really kind of hope, like, you know what, polyamory exists and it's better representation than I'm just thinking, Wheel of Time.
We do not see that type of rep very often at all, let alone in a YA book. That would be very interesting.
It would be. But before we dive into this even further, Laura, what are you reading, watching, and or enjoying?
So Hannah, at your recommendation, I listened to the audiobook of The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. I forgot to mention this, but I was captivated by this book because I just thought it was a really good book, and it brought me a lot of nostalgia and everything just to be back in that Hunger Games world, because I was one of the fangirlies back in the day, and this book was likely written to get my money. I'm sure that
you are the demographic.
So. I'm the target audience, the person who is jumping back in for nostalgia reasons.
But Laura also did the audiobook version, which
I did the
famously Hannah hates. I mean, like,
and you know what? I agree with you, Hannah. It was terrible when he's
so bad.
He speaks singing those words. Are you coming to the tree? It was captivating. I'm like, what? It was not captivating, Santino.
It was not. You won a Tony. Did you make them pay you more to sing? Like, we know what you sound like when you sing. You were Hans, and now you like. What is the weird
Tootsie? He was fantastic.
But also, what is this thing about like, if I'm gonna do voice acting, I'm gonna be the like the mean person.
I don't understand what his deal is. Like, and I do think that maybe clouded a lot of people's reaction to the character of Coriolanus Snow, who the book is about, because this is a prequel about Snow, who is the big bad of the Hunger Games trilogy, which was a unique portrayal, but I don't like the people simping for him. There were so many people that were like, ooh, we love him. And I'm like, no, he is bad.
He's a Nazi. Like, he is, in fact, real bad.
I've heard people say, though, that the movies, like, that movie is, like, their favorite one.
It's a really good movie. So I watched the movie, and as you know, famously, every time a song was sung, said, I've not watched Mockingjay. I have watched the prequel, but every time they sang a song, I said, well, Santina Fontana spoke this, so imagine if you will. But I do think the movie was excellently done, but also, like, you're never a fan of it. Like, I don't understand why people simp for him, because, like, is it like, are you under 25 and your prefrontal cortex is like, he's dark and twisty? Because, like, he does feel like,
I know a lot of people my age who read that book and I guarantee that they were also simping for him. Ugh.
I don't like that because like it is so obvious that he thinks he has like this ownership over this
Oh,
girl
for
who is
sure.
like literally being sent to her own death, and he is self-inserting himself into her story to be like,
It's
we are
very
meant to
much
be.
like she is only important to him because of the value that she offers him.
Mhm.
It's not a relationship. It's
It's
a
not.
what is she doing for me? Is she increasing my status through the Hunger Games? Is she bringing me fame? Is she saving my life? Is she doing X, Y, or Z to make me feel better? Oh no, she's not. Well, then I don't care anymore, and I might try to do something to harm her.
Well, and like he's such a specific character of like it's a good look. Like Suzanne Collins is amazing at saying like, hey, things don't happen in a vacuum. Like
Hmm.
people who do terrible things can have terrible things done to them. It
Yeah.
doesn't excuse their behavior. It is context, it's not an excuse. Like
Which I agree with you because I feel like that was like initially my like confusion with the book where I was like, are we supposed to feel bad for him? Is that the reaction here where it's like, okay, he grew up in a difficult situation, so we feel bad because you're
but
right. It
he's
is a lot. The situation's a lot more nuanced than that.
speaking of Santino Fontana, the situation's a lot more nuanced than that. He is a crazy ex-girlfriend, if you will.
Yes.
So like I yeah, I think she does a really effective job because I think that that's the entire theme of this book is just like
Hmm.
people hurt people, but it doesn't mean that hurt is in the same context because
Right.
like we've talked about this as like in positions of white women, like our white womanhood, like yes, we can be people who experience sexism and we are people who
Hmm.
can be harmed by the patriarchy, but as white women we also benefit from the patriarchy, and
Yes.
if we benefit
And we
from our
benefit from our
whiteness,
whiteness.
and if we utilize that to harm others, our pain and our like suffering does not excuse the behavior
Yes.
of treating other people differently who are in less safe spaces than we
Hmm.
are. And so like I think that that's what she was going for. And I think it's very effective if you can read the book critically and
Yeah.
understand that Coriolanus
And
is
that's
not
the
someone to be
thing
with.
too, where it's like I and you and I have had discussions about this because there's been a lot of people who have been specifically white men who have been reacting not the greatest to a lot of media that has been coming out because they feel like they're under attack. And
Hmm.
I I hoped that people are able to like read and interpret things with a little more of a critical lens and notice like why do I feel this way? Like what are the things that I'm doing to perpetuate some of these problems systemically? And honestly, I think like deep down if you know you're a good person and you're not doing things to harm other people, then you shouldn't be super offended, I would think, but
And if you do feel offended, maybe like do some critical thinking of why
why
you
you
feel
feel that way.
offended. So there was a really good episode of Fuckboys of Literature recently. It's on the Patreon because she has all of her content behind the Patreon wall. But
Mhm.
it says, so your favorite author turned out to be evil. Now what? And it was a very specific context of like we don't always have to say like because someone did something bad, now they're without, they're without ability to reflect or come back or change,
Mhm.
but there does have to be some reflection and some change. And like the discussion kind of got on J.K. Rowling and the fact that she has put a lot of money into societal changes that hurt trans
Yes.
people. So if she woke up tomorrow and said, I'm so sorry, I can't believe I did this," the bad things still happen and she still has to
Yeah, it's
take
still there.
actions to fix them. But like if another person who maybe was just an edge lord on the internet for a couple of years was like, I did a stupid thing. I was 18 to 20. I'm now a 30-year-old person. I feel bad. There is always room for growth, and it's all about the context of it. So if
Hmm.
men feel like they're being pointed out or being kind of like they feel like they're the victims, it is important to note like what's the context? What can you do to
Sure.
help that? And like again, I always go back to you and I were raised in the early 2000s, we were taught that women
Yeah.
were shrewish. We were taught that women only wanted to find a man, that they had no other interests, that they would
Hmm.
push their friends away at a moment's notice. And things like Sex and the City were radical because it was for women who existed with each other in a good
Hmm.
friendship. And that shows that there's a lot of growth. And during that time, like women were a lot of times like pointed at and the finger was pointed at them. And women decided to grow. Like they decided to create more, like, oh, I'm going to become a reader. I'm going to go into my hobbies. I'm going to do yoga. I'm going to get into
Hmm.
exercise. Like all of these things that they started to try to do to make sure they were a well-rounded person. I always hope that like people who feel like they're the fingers pointing at them, they're hoping I hope it's a call to action of like, what can I do to make
And
sure
I
that I'm always
will
bettering
say
myself?
too, like I get that unlearning things that you've been taught your whole life is very scary and hard because I've had to unlearn a lot of
Yeah.
things too. Because I'm a different person than I was when I was younger. It just happens. And
Yeah.
I think you grow and you learn more and you also unlearn things that you've taught yourself or been taught.
Hmm.
Just kind of just the product of your upbringing or like the people
Hmm.
surrounding you. It has a huge effect. So I do
But you
think
know who didn't grow? Coriolanus. And
yeah. Well,
yeah.
absolutely not. I was getting more into like the readers
No,
and
I'm
feeling
joking.
under
Yeah,
attack,
yeah.
but
No.
yeah, Coriolanus absolutely did not grow. But yeah, I think it's a scary experience to unlearn things
Hmm.
for a
Yeah.
lot of people, and I can understand the feelings being really complicated and feeling like you are under attack. But I think you're right, Hannah, that it's definitely more of a why do I feel this way? Is there something I can do to address why I'm feeling this way? And
Hmm.
if you find that you have been doing things that are harmful, maybe check out what you can do to kind of not be harmful anymore or
Right.
cancel out those actions, you know?
And also know that not everyone has to sit with you in that. Like, I
Right.
always think about like the people I harmed when I was drinking. There were friends who stopped being friends with me. And me changed now today, 3.5 years into sobriety. I don't wish that they would take me back as a friend. I wish that they are doing okay and that they found peace and that my decisions don't affect them as much anymore.
Right.
Like, and I think that that's an
Right.
important context too, that like you have to be willing to let go of someone feeling badly about something you did to them
Hmm.
and like recognize it and make sure that it changes you for the better. But no one owes you your own movement and growth
Right.
reflected back to you.
You have to allow people the grace to process
Hmm.
things themselves too. Because, unlike Coriolanus, it's not all about us.
Oh my gosh. And all the people
Coriolanus,
who think that we are romantic goals for some reason, even though we tried to, spoilers, jump 30 seconds, murder our
yeah.
only love interest that we ever liked and like become weirdly obsessed with her in all the other
We've talked
books.
about this, Hannah, but you had to look up spoilers for the book because it was very anxiety inducing.
Yeah.
Like, even for a YA book, these are really tricky YA books. They're
Yes.
obviously banned books, but
Hmm.
I think for YA, the material is very deep.
Yeah.
And I, I'm kind of impressed with Suzanne Collins. As I was like listening to this book, I was thinking, man, I should reread the Hunger Games because I think I would like it again.
Tatiana Maslany on the audio of the actual Hunger Games is one of the best audio narrations I've ever heard. Like,
Really,
and I think
I
she
liked
like
her in She-Hulk.
I know she was amazing and she sings. So, there
Well,
is
she's got
that.
it all going then. Maybe we should
They're
cover
so
it on like
good.
the Patreon.
Oh my
But
gosh, I would love that.
that would be fun. But yeah, I think they're just incredibly deep books and it was very anxiety inducing to try and go through, especially like that last section of the book where you're
Mhm.
unsure. He's very much in a fragile state, Coriolanus
Yes.
is, and you don't know as a reader how he's going to react. You feel nervous in every interaction that he has with other people because
Mhm.
you're unsure if he's going to react with anger or violence or what he'll do. And I was texting you that I had like many ideas of like what was going to happen because I'm like it's either going to go one of these several ways. Like he's going
Yeah.
to freak out and have this happen. He's going to be immensely jealous and this will happen or this will happen. And it was kind of an amalgamation of all
Yeah.
of the things that I guessed. But,
Yeah, that's very fair.
but it was still a very good book, and I probably need to watch the movie now. I'm surprised that people like it more than Catching Fire, because Catching Fire, I think, is probably, I've said it before on the podcast, I think that's one of the best, if not the best overall book to movie adaptations. I think it's a fantastic adaptation.
I have to rewatch the adaptations because I was like, that was during my like stuck up phase of like the book
Oh,
could never be better than the movie, which is also why
oh.
I didn't watch Mockingjay because I didn't
Is
like
that
that it
when you
was a
were
part
reading
one.
only classics?
Yes, I mean it happened while I was in college, so like
I think
yes, very
everyone
much
goes
so.
through a phase like that though, where you're like told, "Oh, you have to read these certain types of books, or you're not a good reader."
Yes, you're
It's like,
not quote
okay.
unquote worthy of our respect. But it was also like during college years, so like the part one,
Mhm.
part two fatigue had set in, and I was
Um,
like, this is just a money grab, and
well,
Mockingjay wasn't
and
even that
it
good,
was
and
a
like
unique
yeah,
time for our generation too, because they were coming off the Harry Potter
yes.
movie franchise that had ended. And then they were jumping into Twilight, having all these movies, and they were doing part ones and part twos and seeing the overwhelming international success of these type of things. And everyone was trying to replicate it. And they then tried again with Veronica Roth's Divergent. Didn't work out
Yes.
as well.
It
That
literally
one,
crashed and exploded. Like they never
yeah.
finished it.
Well, and that made me sad too because I really liked those books because I read those in
Yeah.
college too. And those books were like a huge comfort book to me, honestly. Like I get that they're very dark too, but they were a big comfort to me during that time of my life in college because I read very few books at the time. But yeah, everyone was trying to like chase that type of success of those movies. So I get where you would be like, no, I don't like them
I don't
because
want to.
I
No.
was also like that too with things where I'm like, no, I am not a fan of this.
I am cooler and better than you. And now I'm an
Although I do
adult and I'm like,
remember
I love
watching the second part of the what's the last Twilight movie?
oh, Breaking Dawn.
Oh yeah, major spoilers ahead, but they
If you don't know the ending of Breaking Dawn.
but they changed something in there where it's like a dream sequence
Yes.
type thing, and I was shocked because you didn't realize it was like one of Alice's visions, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, this is a huge change from
So many
the
people died.
books." And I was like, "Wow, I can't believe they went there." And then it immediately snaps out, and I'm like, "Okay, well, they got me. They got me good."
I, I think they got everyone. So I never watched the final one. I actually fell asleep during Breaking Dawn part one. I watched it in
Fair
theaters with my
enough.
cousins and I like passed out hard, like fully asleep, where I was like, I am so bored, and I just fell asleep. So I never finished it, but I do know about the surprise ending, and that I just like going back to Twilight, just like puts me in my little high school girl memories because you know people are always
Mhm.
like, I always thought I had to act cool and I was better than everyone in high school, and I was like, I was a people pleaser and I pretended to like Twilight even though I kind of thought it was stupid, like. So that's always my memory of Twilight is me reading the fourth book and be like, "Ooh, this is interesting. Like it's a look at love
Mhm.
that's unique." And then the man falls in love with a baby, and I was like, "Never mind. Like
Yeah.
this is just
I
stupid."
I regret everything I said. Yeah, I those that movie though did get me. But I do think like everything at that time was just very much like people were trying to chase the
Yes.
next thing. What can we get all of these young adults on board with to make
Hmm.
tons of money off of? And what can we make a bunch of collectibles and all these other things? I don't know that there's been quite anything that's been able to
Should
achieve
just do like a
some of these.
6 month deep dive onto the Hunger Games and do like a book
Well, and
versus
honestly,
movie and
it's a
like
fascinating thing to even look at just the trajectory of the actors too, because
oh
Jennifer
yeah.
Lawrence had a huge explosion in her career at
Hmm.
that time too, and also the way that it got a lot of young women interested in archery and all these other hobbies. So
Hmm.
it was a really fundamental piece of work.
Yeah.
And Suzanne Collins has been relatively private throughout
Yeah.
all of this. Like you don't hear much from her. Thank you. And
That's always the big joke where they're like,
Keep doing
J.K.
you.
Rowling is like, I can't write another book because I
And we're like,
told you
shut
all of
up.
these random secrets, like wizards pooped in their pants for the longest time.
They just
But Suzanne
evaporated their
Collins
poop.
is
Like,
just like,
okay.
Suzanne Collins is just like sitting over there. And then she's like, I made this masterpiece that is a look on propaganda in the media. And it's like, oh,
Mm.
I guess.
Like, what? I also learned, I told you this recently, Hannah, that so I watch my nephew some days, and he really likes this show from the early aughts, Little Bear,
Oh,
like
yeah, I
based
remember
off
Little
the
Bear.
Maurice Sendak books. And Suzanne Collins was like the head writer for that show. And I I came across it when I was watching with him. It popped up as an episode written by Suzanne Collins. I was like, as in the Hunger Games, Suzanne Collins?
Bitch
What
has
a shift
layers.
in her career. That just she went from writing children's television to writing the Hunger Games and creating one of the most successful book series ever. Like, wow. Little Bear could never compete with all of this.
You mean
But
that creepy little bear who couldn't bend his elbows even though he was drawn couldn't
I think he
compare?
bent his elbows. He
I
does a
don't
lot of
know.
things that are very interesting. But I will say, like, the reactions my nephew has to that show crack me up because he's very into it. He doesn't want to watch other shows, which really stinks for me. But he will. There's like one moment where they were doing magic or something, and they said, "Oh, well, we'll never see so and so again because they disappeared. They were in a log." And my nephew like gasped. He goes, like, we'll never see them again. And
They are dead.
I was just like, wow, this is amazing how this is shocking to a 2.5, almost 3-year-old.
I mean, that tracks though.
It just
In his
cracked me up
defense.
though. And oh yeah, I mean, he's the appropriate age group and he really likes the show. I'm not knocking his favorite show, but it
Seems
just
like you're
cracks.
saying he has poor taste. No, I'm kidding.
We could watch a little more Sesame Street. I tr I tried putting on Bear in the Big Blue House for him, and I said, I have another bear show we could watch. And I put it on. We watched 5 minutes. He goes, The Other Bear. And I'm like, okay, well, back to The Other Bear it is.
He said
But
no, thank you.
yeah, anyways, he's hilarious. But Suzanne Collins has really had quite a career. Am I'm very impressed by her,
I
honestly.
want
And
you to start telling people that you prefer her brother
her work in
bear.
Little Bear.
Yeah, her work at Little Bear. Just be like,
I
I
prefer her really
preferred
early
Little
stuff
Bear.
when she was like with
I'm
Nick
so
Jr.
ahead of the curve. Like, do you remember her Nick Jr. work? Like, true fans know where to
Yeah,
put the
true fans
respect on her
remember
name.
when Uncle Rusty visited Little Bear. Yeah. Um, but yeah, I will be curious to see how that movie is because the book really had me interested. And I've just consumed so many pieces of media recently where it's like toxic man thinks he's owed a woman,
Mhm.
as in Mufasa or Lord of the Rings War of the Rohirrim.
They really be
So
saying, we're gonna shine a light on this, and
we're
guess
like,
what? People will ignore it.
people haven't been paying attention to this, so let's bring it up in every movie we can, and
So,
people will still be like, "What's that?" Anyways, Coriolanus sucks. But
yes.
another thing that I read that did not suck at all, also
Mm.
Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes did not
Did
suck.
not suck. No.
It was good. But Madness, which was written by Antonia Hylton, which is a nonfiction book about the history of the Crownsville Hospital in Maryland,
Hmm.
which uh, it's a collection of stories and the history of a bunch of different people who were in and working in this hospital that had a lot of people who were mentally ill or disabled and the conditions that they were kept in and the treatment that they were given and some of the situations that the employees had to undergo and what happened to them while they were there and after they were in the hospital too. It is a very harrowing book. I listened to the audiobook and I really like the audiobook, but I could only listen for like 30 minutes at a time. It took
Yeah.
me the entire 21-day loan period to get through the book because it's just really rough. And I think a lot of the situations were horrendous and awful and made me feel terrible that these things happen to people. But I think the stories are so important and that people need to learn about these things and know our own history and the way that we have treated not only Black families, but disabled people and people
Yes,
with
very
mental
much so.
illness for an incredibly long period of time. And
Yeah.
it's just it it was a very unique book, and I'm so glad that Hylton wrote it because these are the type of things that I think a lot of people know of a family member or someone who worked in a similar place and
Hmm.
would share stories. Like I have a family member who worked in a similar type place in Illinois, and there are still stories that are shared within our family about this person or that person that they worked with, and harrowing. So I think these stories are so important to be shared, and we need to do better. We need to also recognize the victims of these situations and what has happened to them and their families.
Yeah.
And yeah, I would highly recommend this book, though. Very, very good. But read it when you are in the right space. And
Right.
that was, again, for me, like I couldn't read tons of, I couldn't just plow through this one. It was just too hard because I noticed there was one day I think I listened to it for like an hour and I was like, I have got to stop because I am
Right.
just not feeling great listening to this because it's rough.
Well, I think it's also important to know, like you said, you had a family member who like worked in a place like this. Like
Hmm.
this didn't happen that long ago. And I feel like as time
No,
goes on,
no.
people kind of have this delineation in time of like pre-internet and post-internet. And pre-internet is so long ago and it's like it really wasn't that long ago. It's like the
Hmm.
people in their 30s remember times without the internet in their home. Like
Hmm.
so it's not as long as you think it is. And it's important to recognize like this time period was not that long ago. It's like one and a half generations, maybe. And it's like those
Yep.
people are still alive because we live a lot longer
And the
now.
relatives of these people are still alive and
Yes.
dealing with the consequences of what has happened to their family members and grieving
Hmm. Yep,
what has
exactly.
happened to their family members. A lot of times, I shouldn't say a lot of times, all of the times in this book seemed like they were unjust and the people
Hmm.
were not taken care of to the capacity that they either needed care or put in the right type of care.
Right.
So and we've learned as we've progressed as society that these type of situations are not conducive to improving health for
No,
anyone.
they're not.
So
Yeah.
I don't know why we continue to fall back on trying to create more of these types of places, current admin. But
Yep.
I digress. I digress. Um, Let me think. What else did I have to tell you? I've been still watching The Last of Us and Andor.
I'm behind. We need to cover
Love those
Last of Us season
shows.
2 on TV Tuesday, I'm sure. So I need to start watching it.
Love those shows. And then let's see. I finished St. Dennis Medical, and
Ooh, you've
that
been
show
loving that.
that show was very funny. I also really liked the last two episodes of the season. Very funny. The main character is really fun and relatable. I like her a lot. And
Oh,
let's
good.
see. I've been playing Cascadia solo, like that one. It's just a very peaceful game. It's easy, but it's just like you can kind of turn your brain off and play it for 20 minutes or half hour, however long it
That's
takes.
good.
And I kind of think it's a relaxing board game and it's pretty because I like pretty board games.
Laura loves pretty board games.
Yep.
Prettier the better. So
The
tell her about your
prettier, the better.
pretty board games. I need to get on board game, what
Arena.
is it? Authority and
Board
start
game
playing
arena.
with
Yeah.
you. Because I keep meaning to do that and then I never learn how to use the website. So
I haven't been playing as much on BGA, but I've
mm,
been enjoying the solo games.
oh
So
good.
I got my husband to play Wingspan with me recently, and I had been just playing it solo for a couple weeks, and then he was like, "I'll play with you," and I kind of expected that I would just like stomp him. No, he
Yeah.
just came in out of nowhere and got like almost 100 points. I was like, "Okay, cool."
Thank you so much. I feel so
Nice.
much better about all my hard work. Thank you.
Glad that I've been playing this so much to not improve at all.
So
Good
you did
deal.
improve. It's different
He's
strategy
also
though.
just like one
Although.
of those people that I think sometimes when you care more about something, you do worse at it.
Yeah.
And he tends to go into everything very much easygoing and
Mm.
like it's just for fun. It doesn't matter. And I like playing games just for fun, but I think I'm much more relaxed about it when I'm solo versus when I'm playing with other people where I'm like, I think I want to win now because I've played it
I
so much.
there's a scene in Pride and Prejudice where she like says like I could be better at playing the piano if I had any sense to learn it, you know? And
Mhm.
I really feel that when it comes to board games because my family was so into board games that I like have a certain level of understanding and I never cared to learn more. But I
Mhm.
did inherit my family's competitiveness. So I either am like full gung ho, like I have to win, or else I've completely shut off all feeling and emotion because I'm like, well, I'm going to lose, so I just don't care anymore. And either way, I'm not very fun to play with. So
I think that's maybe why like the solo board gaming kind of works out well for me a little bit, where it's like one, I don't always have an opportunity to just like connect with a group, but
hmm.
also because it's like the quote unquote pressure is off,
Right.
where it's like the score doesn't matter, no one else is around. If you do poorly, it is what it is. Like it doesn't matter versus it doesn't matter when you're in a group. It's like, oh my gosh, they're going to see how dumb I am that I can't win Wingspan. And so yeah, it's one of those things. I have weird anxiety about those type of situations too. So Cascadia, fun. I recommend. Hannah, what have you been reading, watching, and or enjoying?
So for reading, it is the season of the Emily Henry. So everyone has been discoursing online about it, and I did read her most recent novel, Great Big Beautiful World. There's a lot of discourse on TikTok about this book because a lot of people did not like
Interesting.
it, and then a lot
I
of
saw
people,
that a lot of people did not like it on Instagram too, but
and
I
then
don't
a lot of
know.
people came for it in the defense of like, this is women's fiction. It's not romance. You disliked it because you have a limited view on what this book is supposed to be. And
I
Emily
thought she
Henry's
was a
playing
romance
three.
writer.
She's a romance writer. And like, I see their point where I think we've kind of talked about how Emily Henry writes like on the border of romance and women's fic, which is like women's fic is like Bridget Jones's Diary. That is
Mhm.
women's fiction. It could be seen as a romance, but it's not because it's dealing more outside of the romance scale. I think that there is something to be said that Emily Henry could be a woman's fiction writer who writes
Mhm.
more towards the romance side of things. I think that those are both perfectly acceptable things to say and perfectly legitimate arguments to make. Do I think people go too hard for Emily Henry and it has to be the most beautiful romance in the world? Yes, I do. I think it's okay to recognize that she has become a very famous writer for women, and some of her books aren't going to hit as hard because she has to
I
come
think
out
we
with one a year.
try to, or I shouldn't say try, we push too hard on certain authors and expect their work to always hit a certain
Yes.
standard. Like, I kind of think that a lot of these, especially white women books, are maybe over
Hyped.
criticized
Oh, yeah.
and
Over criticized and
and
overhyped at the same
hyped
time. Yes.
because then when things don't live up to all that hype, people immediately go hard for them. And white women are rough on Bookstagram and Book Talk
Yes.
about not liking something.
Yes.
So I
So,
don't know how I feel about it because it's like she's a person. We can't expect people to always come out with flawless work all the time. And none of her work is flawless because she's a human. So,
and everyone likes different books in a different way. So, like,
yes.
my ultimate is Beach Read. I love Beach
Mhm.
Read. It also deals with the death of a father. And, like, I read it when I was emotionally connected to it. And so it will always have a special place in my heart. I'm the first to say I don't think it's her best book. Like, I don't. I think, like, Funny Story or Book Lovers are
I
two.
think Book Lovers might be the best one in
I
my
think that
opinion.
might be
But I do think I don't know that any of her other books that I've read are gave me that same feeling that Beach Read did. But then again, that was
yes,
the first one I read where I was like
exactly.
immediately reading it thinking like, oh, we're panning in like a rom-com.
Hmm.
And I was like, I know exactly why Hannah loves this book, like
Ex-
obviously.
like,
And
and
so yeah,
yeah, and I do think Book Lovers is probably her most superior work. I think Funny Story is like her funniest and like
Mhm.
wittiest book. And so I think there are different layers to all the different things. This one for me was very middle of the road. I didn't
Mhm.
think it was that good. I thought it was a little bit too long. It was
Okay.
418 pages,
Oh, that is long.
and the romance of it is less. So I do think it tends towards the women's fiction, where it's
Mhm.
the story of, small spoilers for the plot. I tried to avoid the plot. So if you don't want to hear it, Laura, I will stop now. But like, it's
Okay.
about a writer who is obsessed with this woman who like was part of this like very, very rich family who disappeared after she turned 60, and no one knows where she went. She just kind
Hmm.
of like removed herself from the world. And she ends up finding her in this small town, and she like pitches writing her memoir to this woman. And the woman's like, okay, I'm going to do that. But it's a competition between you and this other guy. And this other guy is a Pulitzer winning author. And she's worried she's not going to get it. And they like both have to work against each other. And he's dark and stormy, and she's light and bubbly.
Hmm.
And all the pieces were pretty good. I
Hmm.
I just felt it was really long. And like some of it, like, the storytelling of this older woman's history kind of felt like I was rereading The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, like where it's
Okay.
like, ooh, rich person in these like big, huge, things. And I was like, yeah, I think Evelyn Hugo did it a little bit better. So this is not really working for me. The romance is a bit boring for me. I just didn't really get their connection or like why they were so gung ho for each other. It just kind of felt like an
Okay.
attraction on a tiny island where it's like, well, like what's there that gives you guys a deeper connection? It just wasn't quite there for me because
Hmm.
it's two strangers meeting. And I think a lot of times Emily Henry is like always using people who are like coming back to one another and have like an established relationship. So
Sure.
it's easier. So this is like two brand new people. It's going to be a little bit harder to like make you have those feelings or that
Hmm.
deeper connection. And the main character, like the story about her family was there, but it was like lighter, and it was a little bit like more we're being told instead of we get to see it and experience it. And so overall, like, it just didn't work quite well for me, but I also don't think it's a bad book. I gave it like 3.25 stars. I
Hmm.
think the end is good. I was a little bit shocked by the end. I didn't expect like this specific type of situation to happen. So I liked all that. I thought it worked, but it was a middling of the road Emily Henry book. It was my People We Meet on Vacation, which is my other like least favorite of the entire like
Do you
series.
think if this was not written by Emily Henry, you would have had a different reaction to it? That's what I think is most interesting because I think the Emily Henry of it all has kind of
Yeah.
clouded people.
Hmm.
That they react either like possibly more harshly or more leniently depending on where they land on the Emily Henry
I mean,
spectrum.
I may have my Emily Henry rose-colored glasses on. I think I would have felt the same. Like, I think this is
Okay.
a book where both my cousin and I talked about it, and we both were like, oh, it's fine. Like, I really breezed through the first 100 pages, and then I was kind of like, I'm not really interested in picking this up as much, which
Hmm.
is fine because I feel that way about romances sometimes. But a lot of romances I kind of give a 3 star to, where I'm just like, yeah, well, it's fine. I always enjoy a romance. But this one, like, didn't shake out the cobwebs the way a lot of other ones did. Like, I kind of felt like I wasn't as excited to pick it up, and the only reason I finished it as fast as I did, which I had it for like a week and a half, um, was my sister wanted to borrow it. So
Okay.
I needed to finish it when I saw my sister. But no, I think it was a fine book. Like I don't think it was bad. I enjoyed it a lot. Um, but
You're like
definitely,
a Emily
yeah.
Henry like super fan too, because you are one of those that pre-orders or like buys the book the day
Hmm.
of, then tries
It's one
to
of
read it immediately. That's one of the few authors that you do that with.
Yeah, I really don't do it with many other authors where I'm like, I got to
Hmm.
race to start it. I got it. But like Emily Henry is incredibly important to me. So yeah, I don't. That's always the joke is NetGalley won't give me an edition. NetGalley didn't
Yep.
even post this one, so
I was
ha
gonna say she's
ha
beyond
ha.
that galley at
Yeah,
this
she's
point.
beyond NetGalley. So,
She
um,
sold it.
she sold it. She's not here for it. She's not holding
Emily
the
Henry, owner of
chains to the
NetGalley,
door.
former owner of NetGalley.
Famously former owner of NetGalley. Um, but yeah, I liked the tall girl representation. She was 5'9". She, liked to wear fun little skirts, but like it
Tall
just
girl rep.
um
The women who are 6 feet and over, like, yeah, tall girl
five
rep.
nine, cool. But yeah,
It is
it
nice though to
was
not have a main character who's like we're so cute and little,
Yes.
and
And you
that's
can
what
pick us
all
right
men
up.
want.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, okay, well, I'm towering over that. And so I
Yeah.
am clearly Shrek.
You know what I
So,
am sick of, though? And Emily Henry did put this in her book. Men who have borderline eating disorders, and it's appropriate because it's happening with a man, where
mm,
like it's like a man who only eats salad and runs 6 miles a day and has
yeah.
washboard abs. I'm really over that trope. I
Here's the
really
thing.
need us to be done.
I would really like it if we could trend to having like romantic interests, male romantic interests that do not have to all have six packs and look like they just stepped out of Bridgerton.
Right, because like the thing is in this book, this girl like is eating sweets all the time. She talks about how she's like not the skinniest girl in the world. Let's let men also be a little bit chubby, like
Hmm.
because I don't think we talk about enough how like
Well,
we
we
are
talk a lot
trending.
about how we want body diversity for women, but
Hmm.
I don't think we extend that same grace to
No,
men ever. And
yeah,
it's always like a book that's praised. And I get it that we have had on TV for the longest
yes,
time where we get like the King of Queens situation where it's like Kevin
according to
James,
Jim, yeah.
according to Jim, or we have Adam Sandler with whoever he is paired up with that is extremely hot
Hmm.
in whatever movie he's in. So I get that that exists, but I wouldn't even call that the best, very good representation because that's a situation where you just have someone who is awful who
Hmm.
just happens to not have
Have a
like a
slamming hot
perfect
wife,
body.
like yeah.
Yeah, so if we could have more representation of people who have normal bodies across the board for all different romantic interests, and they're also good people, that would be
Hmm.
great. That would be
And
great.
how often are writers who are writing constantly having six packs and washboard apps?
I don't know.
Like, not often, I don't think. So yeah, I am sick of
I
that trope.
even think too, like I'm speaking as someone who's a skinny person who I feel like we don't rarely see people who are built like myself on TV
Mm,
either because
yeah,
I am a tall, skinny, flat person who I wouldn't call myself fit, but I would not, I don't know. I don't ever see people who are I shouldn't say ever, but I don't often see people built like myself on
right.
TV who are considered like the desirable
Hmm.
interest because it's like, oh no, no boobs. Like we don't want her
You
because
have to be Sydney Sweeney in glasses.
yeah,
Like,
exactly. And
yes.
it's like I think we just need better body representation across the board, but
Hmm.
men especially we're not men especially in books, we are not extending that type of
I will say,
body positivity too.
the book, the trilogy, the spoiler alert trilogy, two of them did have washboard abs. The third one did have a a man with body diversity as well, where
Okay.
he was like not the skinniest person, and that was called Shipwrecked.
Okay.
And both of them were plus size actors. And it was really nice because in it, they were plus size actors who were like working on the show about like gods and goddesses. It was supposed to be like Game of Thrones-esque, but lighter. And it was really important that they hired like two fat people and like they're two characters
Mhm.
who get stranded on an island and they wanted them to lose weight and the man was going to do it and like make himself physically sick and the woman was the one who stepped in and was like, we're not doing that.
No,
I'm calling my
yeah.
agent. We didn't agree to that and I will break this contract if you make me do that. And it was like really effective in the
I
story for
like
like
that.
yeah, and it showed like a man's insecurities about being overweight and in
Yep.
the industry that
And the
they're
pressure.
in. And so I did enjoy that section of that book. So yeah.
Yeah, that's good. I
Um,
think just in general though, we need to be looking at like how we're depicting characters and people on screen and also in books because I know that we have been talking about body diversity, but that also extends to like different skin types and
yes.
limb differences and all sorts of
Hmm.
different arrays of the ways that people are made.
Yep. And with that, should we talk about a man with washboard abs in this book?
I suppose can't not.
All right. Well, I didn't really talk about what I was enjoying, but
Go ahead.
I went to Holland, Michigan this weekend and I saw tulips and it was beautiful. And my sisters and
That
I
sounds
watched.
so cool.
It was really pretty. We didn't get to see the windmills, unfortunately, because we didn't realize that you couldn't drive out to it. We got stuck in traffic, but it was very, very pretty, very fun. 10 out of
A lot of
10.
people talk about that.
Yeah, it
That
was,
is like a
and
must-see thing.
Yeah, it was very pretty. I definitely want to see the windmills eventually, which is like a 4 hour drive from me. So I'm like, I can do
Hmm.
that in the future. But great weekend. We got to shop around all the little Michigan stores. So that was a ton of fun. And we watched a bunch of chick flicks. So, 27 Dresses, Sweet Home Alabama, all of those things where the woman is high strung and in love with the first man who pays her any modicum of attention.
In
So
love with a young man who forces himself on her at the beach, practically.
yeah, yeah, you did bring that up recently, so I did laugh when I saw that. And also, like, Sweet Home Alabama is a very specific movie. My mom, it was her depression movie. So, when my cousin moved in with us, she watched it every single day for about, I would say, 1 month, maybe more. And so we were all sitting there, and I like mentioned that to my sisters, and then I knew almost every single line, and they were like, "I don't remember this movie as well as Hannah does," and I was like, "No one does, no one does."
You
So.
have a unique ability to remember lines from TV and movies
Now
where
imagine a movie that like you've seen on repeat so many times that you're just like, so I can kiss you anytime I want. And like,
you can watch a show once though and have the quotes down, and I don't know how you do it. It blows my mind.
it's a lot of times if you rewatch it, you'll learn that I was a couple words off, but I speak with confidence.
I guess. I don't know. I try to do it and I'm just like epically butchering what they have written.
No, no, no. But let me epically butcher what Tracy Deonn has written. So where we
What
left
chapter
off,
did we stop with?
we stopped at chapter 16. So Bree
Okay.
was just watching the warlock run away while they were at Rat.
Hmm.
And she ends up going back into the bar, and she
They
sees a
spend a lot
demon.
of time in clubs, I've noticed.
And she's 17 in this book, so weird that they're
Oh
just
my
like,
gosh. This
like
is mind blowing. She's 17. I
she's
was like,
17.
please let these people be 20 by now.
No, no, no,
No.
no, because it's
Oh
been
my
like a couple
gosh.
weeks. No, Lord, there's literally
Hannah,
in
we
the
have to stop
dialogue.
talking about Nick the way we've been talking about him.
I know. That's what I said. I said he's underage, but I was like, what does the
Oh,
fan art look like? Um,
no.
They do talk about him like he's 25 though, because I'm so sorry. The way they describe him is not how gangly little men who are about to go to college look like.
Yeah.
It's not true. But anyway, so they come up upon a demon named Regazelle, but they call him Reggie because
Reggie.
Tracy Deonn is nice to me.
Hmm.
And he tells them
And
that
she
he
loves a
brought them
nickname.
some type of tribute. It's a coin from a bank robbery that is imbued with greed. Then tells them that Merlins are disappearing and no one knows what's
Hmm.
happening to them. And Elijah is like, "Is that all you came to tell us?" And he was like, "I'm giving that to you for free because I'm a nice demon." And then
Cool. Yeah, you all are. Hmm.
Bree is worried about this because she knows that the Merlins are very strong and they're very important, and she can't remember them, but she also doesn't want them to like cease existing. Then they kind of, say like it's not important to us, and he tells them that he really came to tell them that there was a sighting of the crown of the Shadow
Hmm.
King.
Because
And
that's the whole thing. They're very interested in figuring out where that's at. And he's like, I
yes,
have a lead.
because that is, if you all remember in previous books, like Bree had a memory, and it's reminded in this book because it's a YA novel. And
Yes.
again, Dion is nice to us,
And thank you.
where they're like, where she's like, I remember in the flashback, I saw that the Morgaines had locked his crown in a castle, and he was stuck here on Earth because of it. And I was like, I'm glad you
Yes.
remember that, Bree, because I did not.
I did not remember that. So when this was brought up, I was thankful.
I was so thankful. And the twins are interested in this because we find out that the king can't sense his own crown.
Hmm.
It's been kept hidden for years and years and years and years. But Reggie says that people were becoming complacent with what they were doing and they let it slip. So now he can find out where it is. But the person who happens to have the information is another demon of the Shadow King's court, and she is not going to be interested in making the Shadow King powerful again. And he points
Hmm.
out that like the Shadow Court have been ruling themselves for a really long time, so they have
Right.
no interest in bringing the king back into the fold to actually become like powerful and tell them what to do.
Which I think is an interesting point to bring up,
Well, it
honestly,
also
that
makes
it's like,
sense for
we,
demons because it's like, yeah,
yes,
demons are
we're
going
not going
to
to have
want
any
to be in
loyalty to you.
control. Yeah, it made the most sense. I really
Hmm.
like her representation of demons. And so
The
Bree is,
reasoning behind everything, though, is fairly solid.
yeah. And so Bree like is like, who has it? And both the twins are like, don't ask demons questions, Bree. Like you have got to stop getting people to like do things for you where you owe them one. And he asks for a favor if they're going to tell him, and he's like, she's part of the group, so it's binding. And they're like, it's not binding. She doesn't know what she's doing. But they did agree to speak on his behalf to the Shadow King to bring him into the court. And he tells them that it's Deza who has the knowledge of the
Mhm.
crown. And they are like,
I think
great,
it's
of course it's.
Deja is how
Yeah,
you
I
say it.
did realize that. It's
Okay.
Deja. And they leave and they're like, of course it's Deja. And Bree doesn't seem to get why this is so important. Elijah tells her the Demon King cannot go back to the Shadow Kingdom and he's been stuck on Earth for all of this time. And this could make him more powerful. And she sort of realizes through this why Erebus is so obsessed with her, mostly because Arthur is like inside her and he is the one who took away the power. And here
Yes.
she quotes like what Vera has told her before that that she is a wound turned weapon.
Hmm.
They all go home and they talk about how this is really weird, how everything's kind of just happening. And they're kind of just like debriefing, but they notice that
Yeah.
Bree smells of warlock, and Elijah finds out about the warlock who is at the bar. He says that they should burn the coat because Erebus is anti-warlock, and she's confused because she does kind of think that he's the one to blame for the root girl being kidnapped.
Hmm.
Um,
Because he's been hunting them, so.
yes, and they also state that no one will go looking for this girl because she was black.
Which I think
Bree,
is an excellent thing that
yes.
was brought up, where it's like, yeah, obviously we would target these specific people because they
Well,
are black and women, where no one's going to make this news. It's like, oh,
and Dion is using like actual modern
stats.
day stats to tell this very important fact. And it's something that she actually talked about, not to bring it back, but I did get to hear a talk of Tracy Deonn and she did sign my book.
Jealous.
But she talks about how a lot of this story is came from her frustration that people have this obsession with a myth like Arthur that isn't true. It's not based in any like historical fact. It's just this obsession about myths and, the grail and all these things. But we don't care about the history of our own people who have been
Right.
harmed because of the color of their skin. And I think
Mhm.
that this is a really important section that highlights that that's what Tracy Deonn is talking about, where it is very much about the realities of our world
Mhm.
and bringing this type of fantasy element into it to tell a very specific story about the ones that we overlook.
Mhm.
So Bree does ask why the fact that like kidnapped or, disappeared black women doesn't bother Elijah. And he states society bothers him because they're the ones who make it so it's easy for
Right.
these women to disappear. And she is kind of like, I don't really have an argument about this, but she also knows that her past self wouldn't allow for this and she would care that this is happening. So she cares. Erebus returns the next day and he's looking kind of crusty. He takes her to a warehouse where he trains her like he trains other Merlins. He is goading her during this time about the night before and about everything else, like how she has no memory and she doesn't really remember the people who were important to her. And she's frustrated with this because she doesn't get why he's pushing her like this. And she's and he's like, well, you just don't
Because
seem
he
to
also doesn't
care.
seem to have too much knowledge of what has happened and
Well,
what's going on with her
but he
too.
kind of
Like,
points out like you don't have your memories and you don't seem to care, and
mhm.
that makes me curious. He also hints at her relationship with Sel being like the Merlin that I got rid of is
Yes.
someone you had a connection with, and it was disgusting, and I hated
And then
it, and
she's
it
like,
was
wait, I was with him? What?
so. And she's like, is he the one I longed for? I could go without the longing conversations.
Yeah.
He gives her a test after this where he has these constructs attacking her and he tells her that some Merlins can hold it for when they're 8 or 9 they can hold it for about an hour, and full-blown King's Mage Merlins can hold it for about 8 to 9 hours. And she has this moment where she's trying to like hold up the power through
It's
kind
like
of
these
root. It's not really
bears that are
Arthur's.
attacking.
It's bears. It's like all these different like constructs and like foxes
Mm,
and things coming at her. And she has this like shell protecting her, but she's not using Arthur's power until the very last second, where she
mhm,
kind of has it as a second, like a connection to stop it from happening. And it feels like her like limbs are being ripped off. And he
mhm.
comes back and she finds out it was all in her head. It was a mesmer. And she also finds out she was able to hold it for 4 hours and 37
Which
minutes.
is great. She's
Yes.
extremely powerful, and he's like kind of pleased by it too, isn't he? If
Hmm.
I'm remembering right, where he's like, "Good job, you did it."
Yes. And
And
she does
it's
yell
also
at him
weird too
after
because
this.
she still like has the feeling of like how that attack felt and
Hmm.
everything, so it's like hard to take yourself out of it.
And he wants to test her again right away. And she kind of yells at him where she's like, this is real to me. You can't treat people like this. Um, and he does want her to go talk to the people in her past to figure out like what Arthur could do to help her. And this is where she reveals that she burned down her root and her ability to walk in Arthur's memories or her other ancestors' memories.
Hmm.
He's frustrated and he does tell her that there are other ways to get what he needs from her, but like this was a mistake. And she's kind of like apologetic about this. And it's like, Brie, don't be apologetic. Like you were possessed, like you made the best decision for you
Hmm.
for then. She
She
does
goes through hell, and then she's always just like, "I'm
I
so
shouldn't
sorry. I
have.
made that decision when I was literally 2 seconds from dying."
Yeah. After she does refuse to go further, he takes her back home. The next day, the twins are upset because she seems to be able to push back at him and they aren't taking us seriously. She does try to defend them about talking about, the crown, and they're both like,
Hmm.
don't talk about that. And Erebus is kind of like, I don't really care. It's all hearsay at this point. It's not helpful. During this
It's interesting
time,
how quickly she like kind of gloms onto people that are in her life and like kind of takes them under her wing. You know what I mean?
there's no bond like a trauma bond.
It just fascinates me though because I'm like I think most people in that situation would be very much like we're not friends. I'm not going to stick up for you. And she is so quick to just be like I'll take care of you. And I'm like
It is.
Bree, you
She is
have
Brie.
more heart than me.
She does. And during this time, she does notice that he's gotten stronger from the last night, and she realizes that he smells like the root from the girl from the night before, and she believes that he
Mhm.
fed off of her. He ends up leaving, and Elijah kind of runs off in a huff. And we find out that Zoe does really care about the missing girl, and Bree is super excited that Zoe cares and seems to be somewhat on her
Yeah.
side. She knows that she has to like look for her because her um Oh, sorry. Then we find out a little bit about Zoe and Elijah's backstory about how they don't
Hmm.
really have anywhere else to go. Like they have their father who put them with Erebus, but they can't really be with their mother's family because they don't understand the demon world and they wouldn't have support there. And the only way that they can really survive is by trading with the Shadow King. They
Hmm.
kind of want to figure out a way to get to the Shadow Crown because Bree has it in her head that this is the best way out of this situation. She's kind of trying to develop a plan, but she's
Yeah.
also Bree, so she's like, I'll figure it out later.
As
Future
it's
me
happening.
has this. And so they go and they talk to Elijah about tributes and how they work because they realize that they would have to bring a tribute to
Hmm.
Deja to get the information about the crown. This is such a funny little section because they like go and Elijah is throwing a temper tantrum in the barnyard. And then they're like, where could we possibly find a tribute? And he's like, I have great news. Turn around. It's right behind you.
There it is.
uh, and so Bree realizes that she could probably get through the like protections around the barn and she takes down the wards. Uh, the other two are kind of left watching her and realizing just how powerful she is. And then they go to find
Because it's like a
Deja.
dragon or something, isn't it? That
Yeah, it's like trying to like attack her and tell her she's
hmm.
awful. And it's like this huge, like
And
very
they're like,
big
"How did
moment.
you do that?" And she's like, it was coming for me, so I just did it."
So I just figured it out. Then we leap over to Natasha, who's just kind of talking about how Cell is doing and the fact that he isn't getting better and he keeps escaping and she has to go find him. Then we cut on over to William, who has been following Nick around with Larkin. Nick disappears for days at a time
I'm a little annoyed with Lark because it's a
because
Scottish
he's.
accent that is very annoying
Oh,
with
I don't have to
this.
hear it because I don't do the audiobook.
I normally don't mind Scottish accents. I think it's when we're dealing with this like we're not together and all of the like I do care about you. Let me hold your hands type stuff that I'm just like, please take me
Well, we
out of
had there,
this.
Laura. There had to be a romance that you and I didn't really care for
Well,
because
it's this
now
one in
we're
this
on
book.
Bree and Nick's side. So what are you gonna do? We have to think that these children are too dramatic in some way. But Nick keeps disappearing for days at a time, and they just can't seem to find anything that he's doing. They're going around searching for more gains, and during this time, Larkin states that Will doesn't really care for himself, that he
Hmm.
is a physician that won't heal himself. Will kind of talks about the night that Nick found out about Bree being Arthur Reborn. And Nick had revealed to him that he was abused by his father growing up, that he had broken arms, that he was taught that he had to be
Mhm.
Arthur no matter what.
And
And it
that he
was
and Cell had to fight each other
when
horribly.
he
And
was outnumbered by Cell because Cell is
Mhm.
like uniquely powerful.
Yeah.
And so it was abuse. And Will kind of points out that he's like, well, I believe you, but you weren't ever injured. And we find out that the last scion of Gawain cleared
Reese,
up
who was
Reese, who was
Will's
his
cousin.
mentor and his cousin. We find out that he healed Nick during this time. And this is
Yeah.
really eye-opening for Will because he trusts Reese and he doesn't understand how someone could facilitate abuse like
Hmm.
this. And he's just kind of like, I knew this person. He could heal others, and he let himself be corrupted like this.
Hmm.
And now he does know that the system is broken. Lark wants to help Will and make sure that he's doing okay. He understands that Will has been bottling up these things. He even points out that Will has not grieved his squire dying
Hmm.
and just everything in between. We cut on over to Mariah, who was working on getting the spell that will kind of make her look like the Grand Dame and like really kind of find her power in this, like to
Hmm.
facilitate it. And she's working on it. And during this time, she's comparing herself
And
to
it should be
Bree.
able to work because she's related to her aunt. So
Yes.
they think that it's not going to like set off any red flags for people.
And Valak is, she's kind of comparing herself to Bree. And Valak is like, Bree isn't even Bree sometimes or shouldn't have to
Hmm.
be. So, like, why do you keep comparing yourself to her? I'm a
Which I
huge fan of
appreciate that.
Valak. Like, I love him.
I like Mariah too, though. I
I,
really enjoy the
yeah.
Mariah chapters.
She's amazing. She is able to get into this power and look like her aunt, and she does see Valak is half dead, showing
Which
kind of a
this was
new.
cool because she's like looking at him and he's like, "What's wrong?" And she's like, I don't want to tell you." And he's like, I'm fine. Just let me know." And she's like, "Well, you know how I can see dead people?" And he's like, yeah, but I'm not." And she's like, "Well, you're half there."
And he kind of smiles at her. And then it shows that she's kind of getting a deeper sense of her power. And then we're cutting back over to Natasha. She's still working with Cell. He seems to be behaving like he has a little bit more coherence and he's more
Hmm.
willing to talk to her. She does a rehash of the history about what the Merlins did to her and how she was locked away and she just wanted to keep him safe. She said that she had been threatened and controlled using him, that they
Hmm.
would, beat him or maybe kill him if she ever tried to get near him. And like that's why she hasn't been
Hmm.
around. We She knows that the clock he kind of wants to get back to the Scion of Arthur really, really bad. And he's
Sure.
like, I need to get to her, get me to her. And he agrees to let her try to fix him before this happens to keep the person safe, but he lets her know that the clock is ticking. Um, then we're over to Bree, who's going into Deja's club. They have to provide a tribute, and this is where we find out that like Elijah and Zoe are kind of all talk and very little action because
Yes.
Elijah freezes when they're trying to get in, and Bree has to take over the
And Bree has to be
situation.
like, "Oh, here's what we're doing."
She kind of has to just step in because they're all bluster and all like, we're in
Yeah.
control. But they haven't been trained enough because like Erebus doesn't care that much. They're his
Hmm.
first like wards. He just doesn't know what he's doing. So it puts them at a disadvantage. So they're going to meet Deja and they run into a woman with long dark hair who is definitely
Who is like,
Natasha.
"What? What are
Who
you
looks
doing
at Bree
here,
and she's like, what are you
Bree?"
doing here? And Bree's like, who are you? And she's like, oh, okay,
And then
bye.
she's like, "You look just like her."
And then they speak to Deja and they give her tribute. Bree is trying to get to the crown, but Deja doesn't want to tell them who has it. She does ask after the twins' dad, and they tell her like he's fine, like leave us alone. Um,
Hmm.
and she Bree is kind of like, you're gonna help me, and she shows her power, and Deja immediately is like, I'm on your guys' side now. I know when the wind is shifting, and it is shifting towards the Shadow King, because if he has you in his pocket, there it's all over. So she says that she's going to help them out because of this. And uh she says that I'm so sorry. I forgot this man's name. Oh, isn't it like
Mikkel.
Mikolaj?
Yeah, it's
Mikolish?
Mikolaj, but they
Mikolaj
call
is the
him
person.
Mikkel.
Mikkel. Um, I was doing talk to text with this, and guess what it corrected to? Nicholas.
Michelangelo. Oh.
Nicholas. And I was like, that's not the name. And they head out afterwards. They tell the Shadow King what they found. He says that he's going to send Bree and Zoe in, and they're both kind of upset because Elijah was the one who was supposed to be sort of proving
Which
himself
again,
with
it's
this.
like surprising to me because Bree sticks up for Elijah and she's like, Elijah should be the one to go. He's worked so hard. And I'm like, Bree, why do you
Bree,
care?
right? And he's been so mean to you. He's constantly just like
Right.
mad that you don't have respect on the Shadow King's name. But he says like Bree and Zoe have to go in because Bree's powerful and she can
Hmm.
probably get to the crown, and Elijah is going to be kept there as collateral. If they fail, he will make it Elijah's problem and likely kill him. So, uh, like he
Which
is
they're
mad.
like, what? And she's like, don't you can't keep him. And the Shadow King's like, well, your father knew the risks,
Hmm.
so this is the
He
risk.
is also mad at Bree for showing the power to Deja, and they're all like, "That's what got her to trust us." So I don't know what
Hmm.
your problem is. Then we're back over to Mariah. She's also going to see Deja. I was like, wow, this is just layering upon like we're all here.
Yeah.
They go to have a chit chat with Valak. They go back and forth about Valak's power, how he doesn't know who his father is. Valak is king all the way because he's like, I have a great line of mothers. I don't need a
Hmm.
father.
Hmm.
And he doesn't really care about his like demon line because he does love his family. She tells them about Mikolaj as well, or Mikhail, and she points out that they can send Mariah in after them and that she's known the whole time that she's not who she says she is.
Hmm.
And she kind of is like, I can't wait to just see chaos reign because Deja is all about that chaos. No chaos. No, I was going to make a joke and it didn't work. She says this will be fun for her to send them into the lion's den as they try to figure out what's going on and where they can get the information they need. Then we cut back over to Natasha, who's like, I can't believe I just saw Brie at Daisha's. And she starts talking to Cell,
Oh,
and he freaks out because he smells
yes.
Brie on her and she smells different. He can smell the memory loss on her. um,
Do you ever wonder if he's like ever like in his owl state, just like hanging out?
Laura, never. That has never crossed my mind.
I've wondered throughout all of this where his mom's
He's
like
just
observing him if it's like 8:02 has been in owl state for
if
5 hours.
if he is doing it, I hope it's like the bad labyrinth owl, which looks
I
like a
hope it's like
screensaver.
he's just like so ticked that he makes like bird messes everywhere, that type of thing. Like
And then
feathers
he's like,
all over the place,
he
crapping on
starts talking
things.
about how he smells Brie, and it's revealed that Brie is the scion of Arthur. And she's like, that can't be true. And he's like, she has root power as well. And she's like, that can't be true. I
Like,
tested her.
no, that's not right.
um, and he's like, no, it went down the line, and now he needs to capture the king, and he needs to get to her. I keep saying that he needs her. So,
Which
that's
I do
fun.
kind of feel bad because Natasha has been like in this La La Land basically, where she thought that Faye, her friend, was safe from all this, and oh, at least Bree is safe, and it's like, oh, come on.
It was
And so
very
now
YA
she's
though,
having
of
this,
like at least she's free, and it's like,
yeah,
then we kind
yeah.
of went to Will and crew where they're like the Morganes found us before we found them, because we run into Ava and they have a little shindig where they're like, remember that Ava was in the last book too, and I was like, not really.
I did
So,
not remember Ava either.
but Nick seems to like have some kind of like back and forth with Ava where they do a rundown of what's been happening with the book, that Bree's missing, and that he needs their help. And he wants to come with them and to help him pretty much find Bree and Sel. And he tells
Hmm.
them to name their price. She says that she wants his assistance. She doesn't need their money. Or he says like I have a lot of money, and she's like great because I need a lot of it. Um, and so Nick kind of goes over to Will and he's like, the plan was always for me to go with them. You need to go back to the order, tell them that I like overtook you, that I ran away, do whatever you need to do. But like what I'm working on is so much bigger than this and I can't
Hmm.
do this anymore. And so they leave and like Will's trying to go with him because he's like, no, we're friends and I love you. And Lark is like, no, Will, you're staying behind. You're
Lark's like,
not doing this.
you don't need to go. It's fine.
And then as they're about to leave, a car explodes.
Yep.
And Thompson shows up with another Merlin. We find out that they've definitely been following Nick, and they did know this
Yes.
because they mentioned like there were snipers and they saw the other
Hmm.
Merlins coming. So we kind of had some type of knowledge that this was about to happen. But the Morgaines and Nick run, and Will and Larkin overtake Thompson and this other mage guard. And they're like, "What are you doing here? Like, are you trying to
Hmm.
sabotage this? Are you trying to watch this? Like, Thompson's not a safe person. Are you trying to kill Nick?" And he kind of says, like, "I'm here for the Regents. I'm not here for you." Like, they overtake the Oathbound, and it's like, that doesn't make sense. Why is that happening?
I have a hard time figuring out some of these things where it's like, why don't the mage guard have to protect the Legendborn? I'm confused.
I think it's a
Just
little
because
bit
they're
like
not oath?
capitalism is the worst of us all because like I think it's one of those things where if you put it like the owners of a company are not the same as the board, because the
Mhm.
owners of the company own the company, they benefit from the company, and they technically make all the decisions, but the board is there, like they're the neck, so like the owners are the
Mhm.
head, and then the neck moves the head any way it wants to. And so the regents are there longer term because there's a lot of turnover with the owners,
Mhm.
but the regents are there and they're established. So they get to have their own power as time has gone on. And so they get to control things. So even though they shouldn't, everyone's kind of like, well, the regents are there for longer. So it makes sense that they have a little bit more power. And now they've overtaken everything and they're like way more powerful than the
Yeah,
Legendborn.
and
And that's the
super power
problem.
hungry too.
Exactly. And so Thompson is like obviously wanting to go after Nick, but they have like syringes and they think that they were trying to get something from the Morgaines. Um, and they're like, well, we need to go back to the Institute to find out what's happening.
Hmm.
And so then we cut on over to Bree. I do like that we're like 4 months after she's disappeared. So we know that more time has
Some time
passed.
has passed.
Yes. And they are at the party. And there's a lot of world building with the party. It's a lot of rich people.
Hmm.
They have to have their faces covered. And Bree and Zoe are dressed to the nines. And we hear a lot
Hmm.
about what their dresses look like. And they are invited via invitation that like it doesn't really show who they are. That's not where security is
Hmm.
because it wouldn't work for the plot if it was.
Right.
But it's a seal that shows who's invited, and
Hmm.
it's a magic seal so they can see it anytime they want. When they're walking in, they see someone get taken away by one of the head people there, um, named, I forget what her name is, but she is Mikhail's right hand woman. And Bree's kind of getting nervous with this. She doesn't really know what to do. She doesn't want to get caught. And like they're trying to get settled. They're not supposed to stray away from each other, but Bree has to. She kind of slips away
I
after
mean, it
Zoe
was
makes it.
inevitable that they were going
Yeah,
to
they had to
be
split
separated
up.
because she
Um,
had to see Hottie Hottie.
Hattie McHutterson. I mean, appropriate for a 17-year-old girl to think is hot. We are adult
Yes.
women, so he would
We do not
never
think he's hot
objectify a
ever.
17-year-old man, or 17-year-old child.
I'm shocked.
Who they
I
describe
really
like
thought
he's
this was someone who was
I'm
like
so
25.
sorry. They describe him like he's 25. So that is why I'm objectifying the 25-year-old man version of Nick, not the
I could have
17-year-old
went to high
version.
school with him.
Yes, exactly. So, she like Brie goes, she has to take out a warlock. She goes into this basement and she's being all like sleuthy and getting into the
Hmm.
underside of things. And she's just about to find the crown when another thief comes in and they start fighting. And he's dispelling all of her constructs and all of her daggers. And she's like, who is this and how is he doing this? And then he falls on top of her and he says, Bree? And she says, who are you? And we all know
And we're
who it
like,
is.
it's Nick. He's
And
back.
that leads us to part three, which shows us
If anyone
60.
did not guess that this was Nick, have they been reading this book?
I thought it was Sel. Could you
How are
imagine?
you out of your
How
mom's
did you
basement?
get out of here? Why are you an owl right now?
Did you
So
fly out, you silly owl?
you silly little goose. That is probably how he's escaping now that you mention it, is he's
Yeah,
just like
he's
poof going
flying out.
owl and flying out the window.
Mhm.
And so part three starts with 65 hours after Brianna Matthews disappeared, and we are in Nick's head.
Nick's
And we find
head.
out that Nick is a sneaky little sneak, and he can
Hmm.
get through the evil wards that make him feel bad. I kind of wonder if it's just like he suffered so much that like this is nothing to him, but I don't really know, so we
Yeah.
shall see.
I kind of wondered that as well, where it's just like, is it that he just has like a really high tolerance?
Yeah, I kind of wondered. But he called Donovan, who was the other person who was supposed to be the Lancelot construct, in to
Mhm.
help him with a couple of questions. And this is a section where I couldn't give a shit less about Donovan and his poor little me guy. Like, because like he has a moment where he's like, I was supposed to be second in command, and now do you know how low I've fallen in the rungs? And this is ridiculous. And I'm like, I'm so
This is one
sorry.
of those things where it's just like I care
The
so
time.
little about like the hierarchies that exist for white rich people. Like,
Like it's just so
oh
boring to me.
no, you
And
don't get
you
to
don't
be
get to be a
second in
powerful
command.
because you were born into a very specific lineage.
Yeah.
And he kind of says like all because of what? Like all because of the like mistake or happenstance of what happened to this young girl. And Nick is like, what happened to
Are
her
you
was rape.
kidding me? Like that was sexual assault.
We're not
Okay.
pretending it's differently. We're not pretending that Bree isn't someone who has been horribly victimized
Hmm.
by this world and the people around it. And so Nick continues to be a very good hashtag ally. But we also find out that, and this is also interesting because Donovan has a lot of the viewpoints of what I think the Regents see,
Yeah.
which is that Bree took something from them by
Right. That
existing, by the mere
yes, that
existence
she
of
wasn't
herself.
owed this. She came in and swooped out and grabbed it.
And we also find out that like the lions are a little bit secretive. They don't want to show their whole hand. And so there are
Which is
things,
interesting to me too, because it's like they even don't want to like talk about their powers and what happens to each other and everything too,
mhm.
because of reasons. And it's like, okay, well, that seems a little unsafe, but okay.
It is unsafe, but it also makes sense with people in power that they're like, this is
Hmm.
our secret. You can't know our secrets. And so we find out that there are other things about Lancelot that we didn't know. Like he has visions and we don't really know what they
Which I'm
mean.
glad that we know that there's some more here because I was often wondering, like, what's the big deal about being Lancelot?
Yeah. And then Nick came in and he's like, I'm important too. And we're like, apparently you are.
Well, and
News to
then
us.
it's mentioned too that he can like challenge for Bree for the quote unquote
He,
supremacy.
he can because they had Merlin and Arthur and Lancelot knew that like Arthur could become too powerful or someone in the line could
Hmm.
become too powerful and it would be dangerous. So Merlin connected their powers so that it's possible to overtake if they need to,
Hmm.
which makes Nick feel bad because it should, but
Hmm.
like and so we have
But
this
also,
new.
that's going to become a thing at
Oh
some
yeah,
point
where it's
where,
going to be like, is he going to take over her powers or try
right,
to stop her
is he
because he
going to be
doesn't trust her?
corrupt?
And is he going to think she's corrupt because she's now working with the
Hmm.
Shadow King and he quote unquote
Right.
thinks he has no other choice? And so we flash back 4 months and 1 week after Brianna Matthews disappeared, and we find out it definitely is Nick, and he talks to her, and like something happens where the security alarms go off and they have to return to the party. Like there's
Yeah.
no time to get the crown. And Nick is being Mr. Capable, where he's like, are these your shoes? We're leaving right now. Come with
But
me,
also,
Brie.
he's like not questioning too much of like why she doesn't know him. He's not
Yeah.
devastated in the way that I kind of thought he would be. And
I actually liked this because
I like it that he isn't, that he reacts so calmly,
well,
but it's,
magic exists in this world. So to me,
yeah,
I'm like, this is just people who deal with magic, where it's like, oh, okay, something else that I didn't realize like could happen happens. Great. Moving forward, I can accept this. Like
I
it's one of
do
those
think
things
though
where
that it
like,
like very much makes Brie more attracted to him, where it's like it draws her
yes.
in more rather than him being like, "You don't remember me? How do you not remember me?"
I also think it's an effective way to show that Erebus is trying to play with Bree in ways that he is being like not truthful to her because
Yes,
he's preying on her fears and insecurities to be like, no one will support you if they find out that you
mhm.
can't remember them. No one will trust you.
They'll
And the
be
first
heartbroken.
person she meets is like, no, of course magic can affect you like this. Of
Hmm.
course you deserve some grace in this. Like, I trust you. We don't know what's going on, but we'll figure it out. And I think that that's very reassuring and it helps detract from the Erebus of it all because a lot of this book has been like, should we trust the Shadow King who's
Right.
literally murdering black girls? Probably not.
Hmm.
Um, so he does like kind of talk to her and he sees her like dissipate root really fast. He sees
Yep.
how powerful she's become. He's like, this is all very new, but great. And then they go into the elevator and he's like, I'm really sorry I have to do this. I don't like having to do this for
Hmm.
you. You've had enough happen to your body without consent. But he does kiss her.
Hmm.
Surprise kiss. And she likes it.
Well,
And
she
then
instantly feels this attraction to him, like even before she like sees his face, where she's like, "I am into this person, and I do not know why, but
and she
he's
realizes that
big and
he's
strong, and I like it."
she also realizes that he's the one she's been longing for, which is
Hmm.
important to note. And then the doors open, and it's Bianca who is the right hand person of Mikhail.
Also, I'm just
Sorry.
gonna say that people should not name people Bianca because Bianca is always a bad woman and a villain and
Well,
everything.
that takes care of my
Ask
child's
Jim
name.
Butcher.
And so they kind of are like, "Oh, here's our invite." And it's like, "Is this your fiance?" And he's like, "Of course. We were just making out like rich people do in an area
Yeah.
we're not supposed to be." And he's supposed to be this like high-powered like hotel mogul. And so she's like, Brie gets
Again, all of this is like messing with me because I'm like, okay, Nick is just rolling with the punches and being cool.
again, he was
What?
raised to do this. We just didn't believe him.
I know. I never did.
But no
I
one
never thought he
believed
had it
him.
in him.
But no one believed in me. And so Brie kind of gets pissed at him because she's like, "No, you're saying I'm your fiance. You've blown my cover. I have to pretend to be someone else. How are we going to do this?" And he's like, "Oh, we're gonna get back to the dance now." And they're like, "Well, there was a security breach. No one like can leave right now." And so they're all sorts of in trouble. And then she
Which I
regroups
guess
with
she doesn't even know that his name is Nick at this point.
no,
He's Benedict.
she just keeps thinking his name is Benedict and they're engaged. And
Hmm.
also, this is a moment where I'm like, Brie, get it together, girl. This man is here to theft something. And
Yes.
she's like, is he actually engaged? I'm like, you know, that's not his real name. What are the
This is
likelihoods he's
this is where the
engaged?
teenage girl comes out where she's like, I
Does
wonder if he
does he
actually
like that
does have a
girl?
girlfriend.
I was so mad at her. I was like, Brie, there are so many more. I need you to get it together. I know you have no
And then
memory.
she's just like, he is so tall, like six
He's
four,
like 6'4",
probably. Like,
6'5".
you're
He could
huge, my
probably
guy. Oh
pick
my
me up.
gosh. And he's like, not that big. She's like, you're mountainous. You're
I could
huge.
climb you.
You climb me
But
like
like
a tree.
so then she and Zoe regroup and he regroups with like Ava. She doesn't know who Ava is, but he's like
Immediately threatened because
immediately
there's
threatened.
something going on with Ava and Benedict, and I'm not sure what it is.
And he, well, like during this, like Nick is trying to check in with her, like, can you still break a mesmer down? Can you still do
Mhm.
this? So he is like discussing all these things. Um, but they're
To everyone
just
else's amazement, where they're like, "Oh, you know how to break up Mesmer? Okay."
yeah. And so he she goes up to Zoe, Ava's there, and then Mariah shows up and she's like, Brie? And I'm like, oh my gosh, so many things are happening. Who's on
And
first?
this
What's on
is the
second?
reaction we get where Mariah is a little bit hurt, like, "Oh, you don't remember me?"
Yeah. And he's just kind of like, yeah, it's a long story.
Hmm.
And we kind of have a regroup where he's like, I had to say she was my fiance. We were in the basement. We were trying to do what we needed to do. Everyone needs to find a new partner. And so they all have to reshuffle. And Zoe is
Yes.
like, hey, other black girl in the scenario, Mariah, you're with me. Ava, you are now alone. And we've just like put everything
Hmm.
shake it up. Where also I'm like, these demons have terrible security because all of these people are sitting in the middle of a room just being like, we were trying to commit a crime. I guess we will try to commit a crime
Yes.
later. Like, um, and so they go back to their seats. Bree is getting like irrationally angry at Nick being an effective actor, where he's
Where he's
like,
going over and like flirting and talking with people, and she's like, "What is happening? Why
well, and
is
then he
he?"
like tips someone and he's like, oh God, I shouldn't have tipped. Rich people never tip, but like that's that guy's livelihood. And I'm like, ah, Nick tips people. And so they're kind of just chit-chatting. She's getting annoyed with him, like, how dare you have a person that you're pretending to be who I
Hmm.
don't like.
And
Um,
the amount of times that she's like, "He's got a ring on that left finger," and I'm like, calm down, Brie. This is
Calm
fake.
down. Oh my gosh. And so Mikhail comes out and he's like, we were supposed to have an auction today, but with the security risks, I have to have it 3 days later. And you can all leave, but you can't come back and you may never come back. So all of you have to stay here now for
Hmm.
3 days.
Now it's like
And
a murder mystery party, where
and Bree's
before it
like,
was like the Great
oh,
Gatsby.
that is exactly what's happening. And Bree's like, we have to pretend to be fiancés for days.
And we're
And
gonna be locked in a suite together?
And also,
What?
they have touched each other a couple of times, and it's always like electric energy
Yes.
is literally flowing through their bodies. And Nick has a moment where he's like, I physically cannot touch you and be around you for 3 days. And she's like, he hates me.
This happens in every single YA book where it's like there's this huge misunderstanding of like, no, he actually is so in love with you that he cannot physically stand to be near you.
Also, I don't think it's love. I think it's just horniness, but like
Well,
it's supposed to be
and
love.
that he's so in
Um,
lust with you that he cannot physically stand to be near you.
And he is just like, man, you're vicious. And they kind of like, they're flustered. They have to go back to the room together. And he like keeps making comments like, you've said that to me before. You've said that to me before. Oh, but before they go back to the room, Mikhail literally murders the person who was trying to get
Yes.
into the party or like trying to record the event or like let it out what was going on there. And no one reacts. And Bree later realizes that it's a mesmer.
Hmm.
So they go back to their room. They have a nice little suite. Nick is like, I will sleep on the couch. And she's like, we can share a king size bed. And he's like, I'm too horny. But he
He's
doesn't say
like,
that.
unfortunately, I cannot. And the size of me, you think I can stay away from you in the this king size bed?
And he's kind of like, no. And also, like, people have disrespected you enough. I'm not doing that. I'm not going into a bed with you to give you no other choice. I'm
Hmm.
just going to respect your feelings. And they kind of have a heart to heart where he's like, I think you left for a reason. I think if you forgot something, it's for a reason. I don't know if you need to remember, but
Hmm.
like, I just want to respect whatever your wishes are. And it's like, Nick is being a respectful king over here.
I will say though, all of this is just like her losing her memory of him is a very convenient way for her to dip back into a story where it's like these two have an electric connection, and
Yes.
that type of reaction where it's not familiar anymore, where people are like, ooh, love at first sight type situation, I
It,
think really appeals to young readers.
I also think it's a good rebrand for their relationship because if you and I
Yes,
remember in the first book, it felt a little flat. And this is now
yes.
like, we have this
There are
history. You
sparks
don't
now.
remember the history, but we have a reason to feel attracted to each other. But also, like, there's a lot of
Hmm.
complications. I'm like,
I
oh, this
don't hate
second
it.
time
I don't
around
hate it at all.
works so freaking well. Like, it's perfect, honestly. Like,
Hmm.
this is a no note section. She really gave us like
Yep.
Brie and Nick 2.0, and I'm living for it.
I
So.
prefer this version for
I
sure.
also prefer this version to them going out to a bar and her with her little fake ID
Yep.
and them making out with her in a little tank top.
Or
Like
him just like
I
waiting for her outside of a classroom, like, hey, something funny about you.
it is awful though because he is like, I remember the first time I saw you. I just watched you for a couple minutes and I was like, Nick, you're going back to old
Nope.
Nick. Please don't do
Let's
that. Nope,
let's
nope,
not
no,
mention
thank
that.
you. And he's like, I just had to know you. And I'm like, oh, okay. But he is like honest about their past and about the fact that they
Hmm.
did mean something to each other, but they can't. During this, she does like during all of this, my timelines are not perfect, but like there's a
Sure.
lot going on back and forth. Because they also have a conversation where she realizes he's Lancelot, and she's like, "Oh,
Hmm.
so we're not supposed to be together." And he's like,
Hmm.
"We are not. Thank you for noticing."
Yes.
Um, and so Zoe comes into their room through a secret passage, and she says that they all need to meet in the library, and they all regroup with Mariah. And this is where they kind of talk about what they're hoping to get out of here. Like they're both looking for something, and they need to keep a lid on this through the next 3 days so that they can all stay safe.
I
But
will just say though, like throughout all this section of like Nick and Bree talking, it's hilarious to me how it's like Bree guesses everything immediately. Like she's like, and so this is what happened? And he's like, yes. And she's like, and then this happened? And he's like, yes, exactly right.
this is
I
the one
noticed
plot
that
hole of the
so many
memory loss,
times where
though.
it's just like, how did she guess that exactly?
This is a thing I noticed about the plot hole of the memory wholeness of it all
Yes.
is like Erebus had a very specific, like, I don't know how this works. Your
Hmm.
memories of the people are gone, but your memories of like your knowledge gained from them is still there. And so it is kind of a moment where it's like, okay, she doesn't remember Nick or he was this person, but she does remember a lot of facts about their time together because she has to,
I
because
know,
the
but it just
knowledge.
seems like
And
too
so I'm like,
convenient to me. You know what I mean? Where
it
it's
just
like,
shows
why
like
does she know
Erebus,
everything? Like, come on.
even if Erebus didn't take her memory away and he doesn't understand how it works, like it was a very silly little spell at the end of
Yeah.
the day. Because if all it did was like, I removed who those people were, and she's like,
Hmm.
oh, but you are my father? Oh, I know how I feel about my father. Thank you
Yeah.
so much. Like it's just a little bit silly. But I get it, you can't be perfect.
No.
But Nick kind of reveals to Mariah that like Ava's and Morgaine, they want Bree dead. They're not
Hmm.
in the best situation. Um, Mariah reveals how she like that she knows Bree, that she was the person who helped her with Root. And this is where I'm like
Hmm.
memory hole plot hole type
Yes.
things where she's like, I do know that I was good friends with Root crafters. And I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah, it's like all of that stuff that just was like, come on.
And she's like, I guess I insert you into this role. And then Zoe's kind of in the corner being like, why would Morgaines want to kill Bree? And this is where she finds out that she is the scion of Arthur
Hmm.
and immediately attacks her. And she's like, oh, Nick's like, she didn't tell you because you were going to try to kill her. She's like, I'm trying to kill her because she lied to me. And it's like, both things can
Yeah.
be true.
Hmm.
And so Bree is kind of like trying to convince her, like, I can still be trustworthy. I still want to help you. And Zoe is not having it. And she
No.
leaves the room. And so Mariah's kind of like, if you have this memory like plot hole, I I I understand. I think it probably has a purpose. Mariah is
Hmm.
calm-headed queen. She's like, but I am gonna go check on Zoe because I don't think she should be alone right now. And
Yeah.
everyone is. I do love these sections because it's like, and Ava should be alone right now. Actually, like,
Yes.
no one should check on Ava. Um, and Nick also points out to Brie that she's like holding a knife during that time, so she
Hmm.
obviously doesn't trust people anymore. And he's like, you can release it. And they go back to their bedroom. And, they wake up the next morning. They talk about how it's very Gatsby of them here, how he didn't sleep
Shouting.
well, and how he has to go meet Ava and outside so that they can kind
Hmm.
of chit chat about what's going on. Um, and they also kind of talk about like how Nick understands where Bree is coming from as the former scion of
They talk
Arthur.
about Cell too.
Yeah, and they have like a nice chit chat about Cell and like what he means to them, which is why I'm
Because
team
she's very much like,
polyamory.
you like him, don't you? And he's Nick's like, no. Wait, yes. No. Am
Team
I?
polyamory.
Yes.
And so he talks about how like Cell calls her his mystery girl, and that he's like strong, dedicated, and that they're good people. Um and Nick kind of tells her how he got here, that he exploited a loophole
Hmm.
to get back to her and Sal because they both matter to him.
Hmm.
And then he has to go meet Ava. And that is the end of the section on kind of a calm moment in a very, very
Yes.
messy last 5 chapters. As I was reading, I was like, what the heck is happening?
A lot
Um,
happened.
a lot happened. I've been talking for so long, guys, and it's mostly about how much I like Nick. So, um,
Shocking.
I really need him to
Shocking.
not disappoint me. I really need him. I'm holding on by
You
like the
know,
edge of a knife.
maybe we're on just this upward trajectory that it's gonna work out.
And it's never gonna fail me, and he's never gonna try to take over Bree's power, and she's never gonna feel violated by it. I just don't know if that can
Uh,
happen.
I don't know about all those things.
But if
I had hopes.
you're, I have hopes. If you have any interest in seeing what happens with the Nick of it all, follow along with us as we close out the final third of this book next week. And in
Yes.
the interim, if you would like to follow us at OWWR Pod on all the social platforms in which we exist, mostly Blue Sky
Just
and
all of them.
Instagram these days, or emailing us at
Hmm.
ourpod@gmail.com to let us know your thoughts or, curiosities about this section or
Yes.
the final section, that would be great. You can also text us from Spotify, apparently. So text us.
Oh,
Um,
fun.
and if you would so choose, if you could join our Discord and chit chat over there, that would
Hmm.
also be pretty cool. And tell a friend about us. Rate, review, and
Yeah,
subscribe. They're
it
all
really
helpful
helps.
ways to get people into the conversation. We love talking about Legendborn. It's a fun
Hmm.
series to come back to. So invite others to join along with us. And thank you so
And
much
we
for
appreciate
listening.
you listening today.
Yeah. So join us next week as we see and we answer the age-old question, is Nick good now?
Oh, I thought the question was going to be, is Cell an owl in his
as
mom's
we
basement?
as we
How
answer the
often
two
how often does
age-old
he exist
questions,
in owl form?
is Nick good and is Sal owl? Join us next week to find out. Bye.
Bye.